Everyone eats out, but people often miss how the food arrives on their plate. Every meal has a story of growers, suppliers, founders, and operators making it all happen. Welcome to Grounded. I'm Lauren Mitchell, and each week I will bring you conversation with the amazing people behind the brands you know and the ones you'll want to know. Grounded is powered by the Buyer's Edge platform, the leading food service digital procurement network, powered by data, software, and collaborative relationships. Let's get grounded. Today on the show, I've got a transformational hospitality leader and dedicated philanthropist with over 2 decades of executive restaurant experience. Previously, he served as Chief Operating Officer at Birdcall, a tech-driven, quick-service, rapid-growing concept in Denver. And prior to that, he held the same role at Mina Group, a collection of over 30 chef-driven restaurants by James Beard award-winning chef Michael Mina, delivering Michelin star-inspired dining experiences. I can't wait to talk about that one. He's also spent 7 years with Del Frisco's restaurant group as the director of operations, a mentor to the future generation of hospitality innovators. He serves on the advisory board for Boston University's School of Hospitality Administration. And in recognition of his philanthropic contributions, he was honored with the Franklin D. Roosevelt Humanitarian of the Year Award in 2018. CEO and president at Bartaco, Anthony Valletta, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's quite the intro. Thank you.
Well, I'm excited to speak with you about a ton of things, but first, Bartaco. So I've been to one of your restaurants, and it was in Nashville. And for any listener that has not been, when you walk in, it smells so clean and so beautiful. I can only describe it to just be like soft whites, blues, and wood. You can smell fresh squeezed lime, and you literally get transported to a Brazilian or Southern California beach experience. And I mean, that's why we go out to eat, right? It literally takes you immediately into that environment.
Absolutely. Summarize it perfectly. It's really about the vibe and the experience. You go out to eat because you're hungry and thirsty, but you stay and go back because the overall experience. And you took some of our best taglines out of my mouth. Like when you walk in, it's the shaking of the margarita tin and the fresh squeezed juice. Every drink is juice to order. It's that feel. It's the music that's friendly but not kind of familiar, and the beautiful decor. The best compliment we ever get is it feels like a beach house. So everything's street style food, elevated street food and tacos. So we take inspiration from around the globe, really, but always looking to find new ways to kind of bring new flavors and new profiles. And it's all about the simplicity and quality of the ingredients. We don't mix it up with a lot of other things. It's 2 or 3 really good ingredients that taste great together.
Yeah, I mean, it seems relatively simple, a taco, but there is so much that you can do with it, even in the category of produce, with some of the specialty items and the vegetables. But just as you mentioned, I mean, I would bring friends that would come in town. I would bank on Bartaco as we're going to go to dinner. We get to pick one restaurant or a lunch. It was actually 90 minutes from where I lived specifically, but it was reliable. You knew exactly what you were going to get in terms of sharing a very unique experience. And yet it's not just one restaurant. You guys have over 30. So I think one of the things I want to ask you is how do you scale that quality outside of just the fact that it's a fully scratch bar and kitchen?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it right. Consistency is so important, especially when you're growing a brand, is because if one location isn't performing to the same level of the experience that you had in Nashville, then you've lost that guest. And even if you're traveling, if you're in North Carolina and you live in Nashville, you're not going to go back to your restaurant. So consistency is so important. And we build a lot of systems and things in place to make sure we can keep quality control top of mind. There's a zillion ways we do that, between being very careful at vendor selection and quality control. It's happening multiple times a day in multiple different fashions, both front and back of house. Is so important. But at the scale component, the most important thing that we focus on really is that we feel like a community brand. And that's the hardest thing to scale. I mean, you can scale recipes, you can scale design, some of those things are easy if you want them to be. We choose to make them a little bit harder because we're more more dynamic in it. But to feel like a community brand is challenging when you're at 30 plus restaurants, and we work really hard at bringing design elements into the restaurant that feel like the local neighborhood. Um, Always being involved in local communities, whether it's kids sports teams or nonprofits or whatever it may be. We're always looking for ways to be part of the community that's around us, and I think that's the hardest thing at scalability is you're a 30-unit brand, and that word chain sends chills up my back. Like I don't like that. I prefer to be called more of a collection of restaurants that are really community focused.
Yeah, so localizing based on community engagement and really just understanding the values there. I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
Why don't we take a step back? You certainly have a ton of experience just in terms of business leadership, and I'd like to get into that a little bit. Again, transitioning from roles at Del Frisco's, Michael Mina, I think you're even with Darden, Bird Call. What were some of the leadership lessons that you carried forward from each of these, and which one had the biggest impact?
Yeah, each company you go to, when you look at the composition of the team, needs something different at different times. So each kind of job I've had taught me something different in terms of leadership skills or things that I had to lean more into. But when I think about the one that really kind of carried me through all of them, I think it's authenticity and accountability. There's so many people that you see a public version and a private version of, and I think that just shows holes in leadership. And I think that when people are looking at a leader, whether you're leading a company or a department or just a division, they want someone that's authentic, that one understands where you're coming from and appreciates the work that the dishwasher is doing and the VP of supply. Like, no matter what the position is, you have to really authentically care. Like I tell the team all the time, people ask how your day is often. It's the ones that actually care about the answer that you want to follow. And I've had it a million times in your career. It's like, oh, how you doing? Good. Okay, good. And then you move on. And that there's no authenticity to that. It's just I wanted to ask her today was because I felt like I had to. So I think just being my authentic self for better or worse. I mean, it's not there's plenty of things that people that work for my career I could tell me that drive them nuts, and there still is today. And we all have those opportunities. But I think when you're really authentic, it helps people relate to you and you can relate to them and you get better feedback. It helps you be more impactful at your job. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with accountability. The term gets thrown around a lot. They're like, hold the team accountable. And typically accountability is a negative thing. I've preached this to my team for my time at bartaco. Accountability usually comes up and it says, who's it like somebody did something wrong. Well, whose fault was it? And that's where accountability goes. And we try to look at it more. And I've done this in my career is like, who's accountable for achieving success? Let's start that way. Like, start on the optimistic side and say, hey, I'm giving you a challenge because I think you're going to be successful at it. And I want you to take credit when it goes off well. I think it's just a different way of looking at things. So I've kind of taken those two things in each job, and there's been iterations of them, of course, but I think those are vital. And I put constant gentle pressure on my team all the time. I use that term a lot. But I think it's important, right? You're that person with their hand, their back, not pushing them, but just in case they slip, you get a little bit of momentum forward. I think that's probably carried me in some of my success in the last 3-4 positions I've held.
Authenticity and accountability. I love what you said in terms of every brand is different in terms of being a business leader. I think anyone can relate in any category of work in terms of the team that you're coming in to lead. So just learning and knowing your team and then making kind of decisions based on key priorities and projects from there. So outside of that, is there a common thread where regardless of the people in the group that you're walking into, or even the condition of the brand that you find is the kind of the highest priority project out the gate in terms of one, familiarizing yourself with the restaurant group, be it, Michael Mina or Bird Call, is there something that regardless of the people that you're coming in to lead that you find to be the most effective in terms of just starting at?
And absolutely. And I use a Stephen Covey from the Seven Habits. First, seek to understand, then seek to be understood. And I think every company I've gone into, I've worked really hard at kind of building the sweat equity of getting on the ground and learning every position and every job and seeing every restaurant and not going in to point out what's drastically wrong, but going in to understand what drives them, what their challenges are, how I can be more effective in leading them, where they haven't had previous leadership. I think it's always important. I mean, typically jobs are turning over because somebody got fired, someone quit, or some like there's a gap that exists, and every leader has gaps. So I think that seeking to understand is so important because a lot of people, and I've seen it in my career, we all have that someone comes into a company and after 2 weeks says, "Ah, I already know better than you," and the bulldozer comes through, and you don't realize that the bulldozer can take up some really good soil. And I think it's important to understand the foundation. If you're in a turnaround situation, of course, you're walking in with a little bit of different scope. That ability to seek to understand has to shrink because you don't want to understand a broken system. But I've been fortunate to not have to walk into a turnaround. I've been able to work for some really great operators and some good companies. So it was more about understanding, hey, how did you get to where you're at today? What made you successful? What are the key components that you think are vital to our success? And what things would you change? My most favorite question I ask, and still to this day, I'll ask hourly employees, I ask leadership. I always say, if you had my job tomorrow and you could close your eyes and change one thing in 24 hours, what would it be? And similar to what I said earlier, it's not just asking the question to ask. I actually want to know. Those are the things I like to act on. And it's incredible when you hear a line cook or a server or a manager level at your corporate office, oftentimes with the best feedback. They have the best answer to that question because they're the most removed from it. So they think without filters. They think without, the executive branded mind is just, I wish this was better. So I think going in any company, that is so crucial and so underutilized when people walk in as an outsider.
Yeah, and going back to your original point, I think it's one thing as a CEO to ask that question at all levels. What would you do if you were CEO? But it's another to listen and implement their answer and talk about empowering, the team that you're leading in terms of, what they say makes a difference. And it also allows them to speak up more. And that becomes a beautiful machine.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm curious about the Michelin star situation. First of all, just the intensity, the challenge in running an operation. Is that normally the goal? How do you manage the spend? And I'm not sure how much you can share, but in terms of your experience with the MENA Group, can you just share a little bit about the experience of working with chef there, and then just from an operation standpoint, how that shakes out?
Yeah, Michael's an incredible chef, an incredible guy, and still a friend of mine today. And it was just fascinating to work side by side with someone as talented as he is. And to be surrounded in his network of other chefs of similar, credibility. I think the best word is intensity. I mean, there's just such a level of scrutiny and intensity around everything that you do. And it's a level that restaurants, no matter if you're QSR or full service or fine dining, everyone aspires to have the attention to detail that you do at a restaurant like that. You aspire to be able to look at the creases on a tablecloth. You aspire to take out a tape measure and measure how far every fork is off the end of the table. Those are things that it's crazy when you think about it, but it's really about discipline. When you look at casual brands that still are successful, and I think when you think about a typical everyday casual restaurant, the everyday consumer doesn't care if the fork is half an inch or 2 inches off the end of the table. They care if the fork is clean on the table, right? So there's also a level, where does that discipline get used? And I think the difference at that level is everything matters. Everything from the way that the flowers smell and facing and the color they look against the wallpaper, to the way the bathroom attendant is sitting and speaking and engaging with the guests, to the way the host, there's just so many things that you really over scrutinize in a good way about everything you do. And that's what makes his company so successful. I think that discipline is amazing to learn for everybody. It can make you go crazy to an extent because
Yeah.
The expression obsess over details, that only gets you the entry point of what Michael's expectations are, which is great. So I think that discipline carryover really is what's important to your consumer. And when you go into a Michelin restaurant, and why they get those accolades and why they're so incredible experiences across the globe is because every single thing is intentional. I think even at us at Bartaco, of course, when I aspire to make sure the glass is the exact same point, sure, but does a guest care in a restaurant? They don't, and that's okay. So I think the best thing I could translate I've taken is the level of discipline about what matters most to your guests is where you should put all of your time. And that's, I think, a really important thing is we sometimes overcomplicate what we do. I joke with my team, like it's tacos and tequila. Shouldn't be that hard. It should be very simple. But it's intense in the best ways possible. But you don't step right when you're supposed to go left ever. It's a very methodically thought out thing. But to see the creative world of Michael's mind merge with such a standardized world, those worlds typically don't combine so fluidly. And working with a chef like Michael, they do every day, and that's the real talent I think that these Michelin operators have.
Yeah, and it becomes a breeding ground for your experience. I can't wait to hear how you're applying it still currently, something strangely relevant from then that you're using today. I don't think any of us go to a Michelin star rated restaurant frequently. I definitely don't. I probably hadn't. I don't even know if I've ever been. Besides, I did go 2 weeks ago to one up in Toronto, and I can still taste the flavors of that meal. I still talk about that experience because it was so incredibly unique. And one of the first details is there wasn't the name of the restaurant on the outside. I mean, how humble. And then you walk in and it's just the most incredible, like to your point, just every detail thought of. And then everything is so expensive. So when your server brings you a free item, it's like, oh my gosh.
What a deal.
Exactly. Like, thank you so much. And that whole experience is just very memorable. So, okay. So you've been at Bartaco for about 6 years now. And I believe you joined after COVID. So some questions to come there. But, the co-founder stepped aside, giving you his role. And I'm sure there's a reason that, if you don't mind just explaining bluntly why you feel that was, why do you feel that was done? But also, what was the catalyst for you to join Bartaco specifically? So first, why did you join the team in 2021? And what do you believe was the indication that he said, you know what, you've got to take over?
Yeah, I mean they're a little two in the same. So it was 4 years ago this year I joined actually, and
Okay.
so Scott, the co-founder and CEO at the time, the brand had changed hands a few times. So the original founders, Andy and Sasha, had a CEO they brought on, Jeff, who was kind of helping transact. They were bought by Del Frisco's, funny enough, my old company. So changed hands once there, and then Del Frisco's ended up selling it, and it got nestled underneath a brand called Uncle Julio's for a period of time. And then it got pulled out from Uncle Julio's and made its own entity again, which was how we operate today. So during, a 24, 36-month period, there was a lot of shakeup for the team. Our team is, the players that went through that deserve a medal for really keeping our brand intact. But the key there is when Scott came back, when Carrollton, our current private equity firm, took the brand, he came back and was like, listen, I've done this before. I want to get my brand back. He did a podcast in person back, and he was angry that they kind of, changed the way his brand was operating. He's like, I don't want to do this long term. So I said, well, you got to go out and find a successor if you don't want to do it long term. And that was right before, and then COVID hit, so everything went off the table. So towards the end of COVID, Scott was looking for someone that he could bring in that had to earn their stars and stripes, but eventually might have an opportunity to take over the brand. So Scott and I worked closely together for still do today. He's a chairman of our board. But I think really 2 years ago, he took on a second project for our PE firm and was able to kind of focus on that brand while I was running Bartaco. And when he came back, I think he finally just said, listen, you understand my vision. This feels like the right time. We've been kind of doing this for a year and a half with my help. And he's still on helping advise us with tech and real estate and design. Like, he's still here at our beckoning call, which is amazing. But the timing just kind of lined up really well. And was honored to be able to take that. I mean, the original founder, Andy's on our board. Scott is on our, so we have two of the founders on our board, which is amazing. So we've got all of that DNA and historical information still with us, while being able to kind of morph Bartaco into the future where it's going to be for the next 5 to 10 years.
And as CEO, you cover it all. So new market selection, operations management, people management, tech innovation. Where would you say you dedicate most of your attention right now?
It's a great question. There's probably not one where I spend most of my time. I think if there's anything, it's really in terms of personnel development. And we have an amazing chief people officer, Lisa, she's been with us for, I think, almost 2 years, and has done an amazing job really leveling up our team on all components. But I think really at this level, it's, we're coaching, mentoring, and training our team to improve, and looking at all the departments and finding out where opportunities are and how I can help upskill them or fill those gaps is honestly where I probably spend most of my time. That then deciphers which department I'm in more, because some during a period of time need more help. But I still spend a lot of time with my marketing lead in terms of, how the brand is positioned both internally and externally, and time with my development team in terms of new construction and potential new real estate where we're going to expand. But I'm an operator at heart. So my ops team will tell you, even though as a CEO, I'm in the ops probably more than I need to be every day. But that's my heart and soul. That's how I grew up in this business. So if there had to be one area, it's probably operations. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where the guest experiences, the employee experiences, it all comes out of the four walls of the restaurant. So that's something I'll never shy away from.
That sounds like you have a great chief people officer, just obviously putting together the teams that support you, so that you don't have to spend the majority of your time in one lane. How about just visibility, or what are the metrics that you're relying on either on a daily or a weekly basis that make you feel comfortable with all things together?
There's truly only one. It's the guest sentiment that drives that. I mean, without the guests, we are nothing. I can't employ my staff. I don't have a company. I get every single review, both public and internal, every single morning in my inbox, all aggregated by restaurant, by table, like great detail. It's the first thing we do every morning. I still read every single review from every guest every day.
I love that.
My teams respond to it and they handle them in the store. And every now and again, I'll reach out and be like, hey, this one was concerning what's going on, or I've seen a few of these, how are we addressing? But to me, that's what matters. Because if the guest isn't happy, everything else is irrelevant. It doesn't matter what your profit is. It doesn't matter if your employees are happy or not. Like, if the guest isn't happy, everything else is a failure. So that's the only thing that matters to me. When you get behind that, of course, there's financial pieces and employee satisfaction, all these other components that are very crucial. But if the guest isn't happy, that is our job. Our job is to make the guest have an experience like you mentioned earlier. Is they want to leave smelling the lime, hearing the tins, loving the music. If we don't do that, then I don't care about any other metric in our company.
That's a key metric. I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's very cool to hear that you read every review. So of those reviews, customers say, hey, I wish there was this purple radish on this taco, and then maybe you read it again. So how do you take that through and filter and apply it to actually change? So how do you gauge and measure how much you invest in something new? What is the process once you kind of get that intake? Guest feedback is part of that in terms of driving suggestions for menu change, but then also just consumer trends across the industry. So those two in together, how do you take it from there and then think, okay, so does this make sense, real and true sense?
Yeah. It's interesting. We've done some focus groups, and people that love the brand, if you ask them, would you change the menu? They always say yes. But then you take an item off or change it, they're like, well, what about the old one? I mean, if people always want the element of change. I think a lot of the trends that are out there, whether it be, these Beyond Meat style things or the sustainably farm, like all of the things that come through, it's we don't tend to adopt the hot trend because they come and go, right? I mean, you could lose your mind just trying to keep up with what's the hot food or flavor or cuisine that's right now. We try to look at really great flavors that are a little bit different, that have a true inspiration behind them. So whether it's from a restaurant we went to or somewhere we visited on vacation or just a dish we had out with our friends at a weekend night, um, we try not to just jump on the bubble of what's the fad and look at things that are here for good. And I think when you put really good tasting food together, people come back for it. The trends you run for, then you have to constantly stay up. But I think sometimes you change the quality and expectations of what you are as a brand by trying to just keep hot because everyone's doing Doritos and crusted something. It's like, well, that doesn't really work for us. So I think for us, we're always looking for inspiration in kind of very different avenues. And we're fortunate that we have some great vendors and partners that consistently bring us great ideas. Or, hey, we're going to do a secret taco and we're looking to do a really fun vegetable. And I think it was like a year and a half ago, we did a squash blossom taco, which is most people are like,
Beautiful.
what's a squash blossom again? But it was cool and different. And it was almost like we're creating our own little world of trend where we're not a chef driven restaurant per se, but we want you to have a culinary experience when you come to Bartaco. So the trends, we monitor them. I see which ones are here to stay. The drop in alcohol, that's a trend that's here to stay. We're keeping an eye on. That's real. People actually caring about where their food comes from, that it's not just a pre-produced or manufactured or GMO item. That's real. That's been around. And I believe that's here to stay. So those things we'll spend time on. But when they're tried and true, it's like, okay, then we can actually have some conversations.
Beautiful. I really respect your position on discounting. I think we need to leave room for that in this conversation. So do you mind just kind of overview of how you feel on price discounting and what your position is on it?
Yeah. I could spend hours on it. I firmly believe that if you're willing to discount something on your menu, then it wasn't worth the price that you originally priced on your menu. You were telling your consumer that my $7 taco is actually only worth $4 because guess what? I can charge you for it to lure you in. And ultimately, I think a discount doesn't create loyalty. It actually creates some brand dilution that your brand now is not worth what the price is on there. So it becomes gamified where you have to consistently, I have to discount this. And then you have to roll over discounts the year after. And well, we're a little bit softer because last year's discount performed better than this year's discount. And over time, you get into a lot of trouble. I think you're telling your consumer that there's a dumbed down version of your brand at this discount level. That's more important, and that's what we're going to do. And you lure them in until that consumer finds that same product for less somewhere else. So you're chasing, I think there's a subset of consumers, and it's a larger subset. I mean, don't get me wrong, you see it in restaurant sales when they report. But the consumer that's chasing the discount, the $20 burger that's now $15, they're looking for the next best deal. Then they don't care if it's at your restaurant, my restaurant, or Jane Doe next door. They're just looking for the deal. And the second someone gives them a better deal, they're gone. And I think the amount of money that people invest in that discount, that $20 at 50, a 25% discount, to not build loyalty, to me doesn't seem like there's ROI. I don't mind spending money on our consumers. I'll give away free tacos all day long. It's the old Truett Cathy Chick-fil-A, right? I've never discounted a chicken sandwich, but I've given away millions. That's why Chick-fil-A is doing $10 million AUVs, because they're like, it's worth what you're spending. But I'm not discounting it because it's what it is. And I think there's real value to that. I think there's other ways you can provide value not by not discounting it. There's barbell strategies where you offer something inexpensive, something at the higher end. You just introduce some items that are more affordable. If $15 is what makes your consumer happy, then make a really good sandwich at $15. Don't discount your burger. It's somewhat unpopular among some people, but I've been part of brands that discount, and I've seen the pain and agony you go through, and the consumer that comes in for that.
Yeah.
And I just don't think it's a way to build a sustainable business. I think it's a way to build a very hectic business plan.
Hectic. Yeah. I mean, I think the recovery on that strategy too, I mean, it has to get pulled back from somewhere. So you're just
Correct.
constantly swinging. And then even from a year-over-year standpoint, I think that's really interesting. Shows how well you know your product, the value. So thanks for sharing.
Of course.
Let's talk a little bit about people again, specifically the workforce. I want you to kind of touch on what you're seeing today in terms of what they value and how you've adopted your culture and or on the onboarding process just to make sure everyone's happy to choose bartaco and stays. Because, and I'll get into it, your employees have been with your brand, your chefs have been with your brand for a very long time.
Yeah. I think it's really changed a lot in the past few years. We lost a lot of our workforce during COVID. We're getting a handful back, but I shared this with someone the other day. Like we manage the most amount of generations right now than we ever have. We've got boomers to Gen Z, and all of them are looking for something different out of an employer today. Many years ago, when I'm even time back 10 years, you could kind of have like a one-stop shop. Like, oh, if I offer good insurance and 401k, a decent vacation package, and I'm in the top, 20 percentile of compensation, I'm going to get the best people. And that doesn't necessarily work as much anymore. I think what people are looking for, I treat similar to a consumer, is an employee wants almost an a la carte option to fit their need. Because every 34-year-old manager is different. Like one is single, one is married, one's married with 3 kids, one's taking care of their parents, and all of them have different needs. And based off those needs, they find longevity of employment based on people that tailor to them. So, we've been really fortunate. Again, I mentioned Lisa, our CPO, and gentleman Scott Rodney, that's in charge of our benefits. The two of them have been pioneers for thinking creatively about how our teams can become more attached to our brand based off the benefits we provide for them. We've done student loan forgiveness. We partnered with Duolingo to learn languages. We've done 401k match. We're getting creative on compensation packages. We've reallocated the way we've done bonus to make it cleaner for managers. I mean, the list is like, I can go on for a long time, but the idea behind it was my goal long-term, which is probably very aspirational, is you think about some of these incentives that keep people at restaurants. I was sharing this with somebody, like 401k, the typical adoption in a restaurant is like between 5 and 7%. Like it's a great benefit that most people don't take advantage of. And part of it's because they don't know. And part of it's just because people, that's not a benefit for them. So if 7% are benefiting from that, how do you get to 93? What I'm aiming for is with the menu of our benefits, that 100% of our team is involved in at least one of those benefits. To me, that means we're listening, we're adapting, and we're changing. And I think you go back to before, when they have a voice in their employee journey, that builds loyalty. It's not, pinball machines and ping pong tables you hear about Google. Like that's not it. It's the culture of listening and the culture of acting on that that's really vital. And I think the two of them have spent an amazing amount of time doing that. A testament to them. But that's something that I think is a big challenge for our organization. I want to make sure we get to is continue to find ways that you can touch just as many people as possible. That's something different that no one else would provide.
People first culture sounds wonderful. We have a unique glimpse into your fresh produce category as we support you in sourcing it. And there's an individual that's worked with you. I think they started as a bar back, then a bartender, and now manages all the purchasing. His name is Sam. And he works with Ben on our team. And Sam spends every single week on behalf of Bartaco talking to our procurement team and hearing about all the commodities to make sure you understand the risks, the pricing, the quality. Um, the gentleman, Ben, was actually giggling 'cause he said, I mean, every margarita is fresh squeezed. So the amount of time that I've talked about lime yield with him,
Well, yeah, I believe it.
it's something he works and deals with on a daily basis. So talking a little bit about just supply, I know you've got a special proprietary tortilla too. How do you distinguish between what you want to localize versus source nationally? And are there specific things that have perhaps changed over time based on your growth?
It's a great question. An ideal world, I would love everything to be locally sourced and locally purchased. Obviously, the magnitude of that, and to our earlier conversation, the consistency of that is a really, really big hill to climb. Sam has done such a remarkable job, and it speaks wonders of you guys and as a partner of ours, but he's really continually finding ways to challenge what can we do locally to maintain consistency nationally. And we found a handful of things from our tortillas was a big, still is, but it's been a topic for 4 years. Working with local produce companies is really important to us. Even some of our smaller vendors, like those, having those opportunities for us. I think one, we're still a small guy, so we like to support the small guys too. It's just a little bit more of our kind of internal mantra, but we're always looking for ways to bring the supply chain forward. I think stories of, getting a mushroom from a local mushroom farmer for a special taco for a month is incredible, right? And that's something that's really hard to do, but we try to find ways to do the hard things. And that's Sam some days probably curses my name, and most days understands the mentality, and he's delivered an exceptional product for us consistently while maintaining a great price that allows us to feel like we're not a big national or real national broadliners. Same thing is that we've really been intentional about trying to be as local as we possibly can where it makes sense. And again, that's a challenge most brands at our size don't want to do. It's a lot more work. It's a lot more of a headache. It takes the calls that you're hearing him talk to your team about. We are fanatical about those things. We talk about lime yields like every week. Limes and avocados almost every week is a conversation about those two things. But it's our two most popular ingredients. So we care about. We care about what the yield does and what the flavor does when you go from a 150 count lime to a 200 count lime.
The attention to detail on his end, values changing. We see that with our clients too. I mean, understanding the path of their ingredients, all of them, traceability, sustainability efforts from our grower partners. What are they doing at that level? All of it's important. So, as we get to the close here, I do want to touch a little bit just on your philanthropic arm, as well as just like your mentorship in the industry. Can you talk to me just about some of those things that you participate in, either on the advisory councils, maybe just pick one that's particularly important to you, and really your mission in being a part of these?
Yeah, I mean, I believe in doing good while doing well, right? If you run a great business, you should be able to support those that necessarily can't support themselves. And it's been such a big part of my life and my whole career, as far back as I can think, and just think it fills my tank to be able to give back to, organizations and great nonprofits and great causes around the globe. And we launched a program last year called the Giving Taco, where a dollar from every taco went to a nonprofit of our choice. We would alternate between a national and a regional, so the restaurants actually had to pick their own nonprofit in each of their markets, which is
Very
really,
cool.
really cool thing to do. Like in that community feel of, went to each GM and said, "Listen, you get to pick.
Yes.
Who's important? Like what's important to you as a GM? What's important to your community, and pick one." But we had some, incredible partnerships. It's hard to pick the one there. It's the most impactful. But I think for me of late, joining the BU where I went to school, advisory board has been exceptional. But I think the most exceptional part about it is I've now been able to, I'm advising 3 students that are entrepreneurs right out of school, trying to get their businesses up and running. And I'm helping them get their businesses out of the ground. I'm using, my network and my experience and my expertise to help out these young kids pave the way for something new in our industry. And to me, that's just, I love that. Like it's just so exciting to have the opportunity and to be at a point in my career when I can now give back to young leaders that I hope in 10 years to look back and say, like, yeah, this person changed the industry. They did something that no one else had done. So to me, that's I just love working with kids and students. I think there's just something really powerful about shaping the youth of our communities into what they're going to be in future leaders. So everything I've done kind of surrounds some aspect of that. Like you usually look at the nonprofits in my life I've done with merchandisers, obviously for infants and things of that nature. We've worked with Oedo, a nonprofit in Mexico that works with training students on culinary arts to be able to get jobs and support their community. Working with the place called the Ron Burton Training Village, which is all underprivileged youth and education, getting them on their feet into college. Like everywhere I've kind of played around has been some centered around kind of the education and forming the future. I think to me, it's exciting, and I'm honored every chance I have to be a part of it.
What a fun project. First of all, rejoining your college in that way. And then I mean, it's so hard for entrepreneurs to navigate some of the questions they have because they've never done it before. So to
Right.
have your support, that is phenomenal. I've talked to a few of you who spend any additional margin of their time doing just that, giving back, because it gives them exposure to new perspectives, especially of the younger generation, which is so important.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing that. I love the giving taco too. Again, localizing a national. That's really, really cool.
Thank you.
All right. So final mile, these are more rapid fire questions.
Yep.
I'm going to start off with, is it true that you grew up making pizza at a local gym?
It's true. It was a place called In Sports. It was an indoor sports facility. But my first down into it, I was flipping pizzas and dropping chicken fingers as my first job for $4.25 an hour. I thought I was rich, which needs me a little bit, but that's fine.
Okay. How about a tool that you're using in your workday that saves you the most amount of time?
I mean, this is easy. ChatGPT is like my best friend.
All right. If you're speaking to a graduating class today, Boston University, what would you tell them?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would tell them not to get discouraged. I think it's very easy early in this industry to get discouraged, whether you're in hotels or restaurants, with the challenges that you're faced with. You kind of have to be a jack of all trades, master of none, and it's really hard to break your way into this industry. I would tell them, like, do not get discouraged. This is an industry that's built off passion. If you're passionate about what you're doing, in the long run, you're going to make an impact. And you're going to be successful. I think that's one of the most important things.
Very cool. And who has been a mentor for you, or at least one of them, and in what way?
Oh, there's such a big list. I gotta say, he's now one of my dear friends, but Scott Gould is used to be a boss of mine at Del Frisco's. He was the first guy who gave me a chance to do multi-unit, and honestly was just an incredible human being, both to me, to my family, to my kids. I think a real mentor is not just about your professional acumen; it's about personal, professional, financial, all the things combined. And when I worked with him, he was constantly challenging me and pushing me out of my comfort zone very intentionally, but was always the first one to catch me if I fell too hard. But got me right back up and pushed me forward. And even after we weren't working together, I still talk to him very frequently. Just consistently an advocate and someone I can always go to for advice or thoughts. He's still so tapped into the industry. And when you think about the authenticity I mentioned back at the beginning of our interview, he's an authentic guy that I think just is so genuine, and continues to be someone that I look at as vital to the success of my career.
People are so awesome. It's so important to have people in your life that give you feedback, that help you fall gently, and then pick you back up again.
Yeah.
Favorite dish at Bar Taco?
Mushroom taco.
Mushroom taco. Let's go. All right. I always like to ask, and I'm sure there's someone who's listening who has been inspired as I am, wants to get a hold of you. First of all, please follow Anthony Valletta on LinkedIn. He, I think it was you who posted, "What's a book I should read this summer?" has generated the most awesome feedback and comments. I took down like 2 or 3 titles because first of all, I agreed with several that were suggested, and then several that just seemed amazing. So go follow Anthony. Is that the best place for people to reach out to you if they wanted to?
That's great. And my email is just my first initial last name at bartaco.com. I always love connecting with our industry or other thought leaders out there. I'm always happy to connect and chat.
Thank you so much, Anthony.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And thank you, listeners. If you loved what you heard today, please share the episode. And thank you again. This has been another awesome conversation. You are truly a rock star.
That's a wrap on this episode of Grounded. We've covered a lot of ground as we explored what it really takes to run food service behind the scenes. For show notes, highlights, and our latest market insights, visit us at groundedonthepod.com. Grounded is powered by the Buyer's Edge platform, delivering smarter solutions, greater efficiency, and real savings through connected tech, powerful data, and industry expertise. For more information and to get a personal demo of the Buyer's Edge platform, email me at lauren.mitchell@producealliance.com. And if you liked what you heard, subscribe so you don't miss an episode.